The next gentleman is Mr. Ron Ward. Hello, everybody.
Somebody said you're saving the best for last, but it wasn't us because we're completely impartial.
That's good.
We're going to give you the board-generated questions, and then at the end, please, sir, 2 or 3 minutes, and we've got 2 of the best, most efficient timekeepers, Joanne and Brad. They're tough.
Can they throw stuff at you?
Not yet. Some are repeat questions, some are new questions. We're just mixing them all up, but they all came from the board of this organization. What group or organization or individual would be making the largest financial contribution to your campaign, both real and in kind to your campaign? Second largest, and then Brad had even asked about the third largest.
I got $1,000 from my brother-in-law. He's a retired Navy lieutenant in San Antonio, Texas. I got $900 from a person that has an office in the building where my wife's office is. He gave me $900. He's a accountant. Got $300 from my mom and dad.
Who's the accountant?
His name's William Hill. His office is 3300 Gus Thomason, Suite 206.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a repeat question. It's one that the group has been very interested in. What would you do, or how would you improve the existing housing in Mesquite and drive up property values? Their wording.
You got to take care of what you got before you get more. You know, I have said before, I'm a preacher and I talk in analogies. And when I was growing up, when I want some more food on my plate, Mom said you had to eat what you had. We've got some old housing stock here where we need to get it cleaned up. We need to clean up the neighborhoods. And the city has mechanisms to do that. It seems like they've fallen on the wayside. There's code enforcement, there's liens that you can put on rental properties and those kinds of things. So you can clean up what you got. Once you clean up what you got, then you can get some new stuff. And I think that if we have new stuff, we know what drives that, is that it's money that drives that. And builders won't build if people won't come. I don't believe in build it and they'll come. So we have to clean up what we got. And we have to make this place a nice place for people to come and want to live here. I could say a lot more, but I'll leave that alone.
I want to thank you so much for coming. You're running against, who are you running against?
Running Mr. Dennis Tarpley.
Okay, Mr. Dennis Tarpley was invited to this meeting. He didn't even bother to respond, which is pretty much his common, you know, he does not even list his email address or anything to get a hold of him. We had to send everything to the secretary and do all this because he is not accessible. And if you do contact him, I mean, he's been known to attack citizens and threaten them instead of being open and obvious. So besides my own personal experience with Mr. Tarpley, I just want to let you know, I just want to ask you, why are you running and why should we vote for you over him?
First of all, I want to tell you what my telephone number is. Okay? It's 972-897-2972. Now let me tell you the easy way to remember it. Okay? Now you have to pay attention now. 972-8 972-972. Everybody got that? Somebody back in the room? What's my phone number, Brian?
We're good.
Okay. 972-8-972-972. I am accessible. been 24/7 all my life. I was in the military for 26 years. I worked for the President of the United States, 2 of them. It was 24/7. The bat phone would go off on my wife's side of the bed. She'd just pick it up and give it to me. I'm not running, and there's somebody in here who's not going to like me say this, I look at him now. I'm not running against Mr. Tarpley. I'm running for the seat he's sitting in. He's been sitting in that seat for 12 years. In municipal government, I think when you sit in a seat that long, you get very narrow focused and you become more part of the problem rather than the solution. And I think he needs a break. And someone asked me in the city to run, one of my neighbors, and it took me 3 years to say yes, because I believe in all thy ways acknowledge God and he will direct your path. But with that, you have to get your wife's permission. It took 3 years. So I'm running because my life is about service.
Could we get your wife's phone number?
You know, I got her picture on, I don't even know her phone number. I can't do it off the top of my head. With these smartphones now, I've got it on a little piece of paper. If I lose my phone, I can call somebody.
We've had some fun with some of these questions, but they're all very serious. We're in serious times, very, very challenging times, in a lot of ways, emergency times. And some of the best questions that have been asked have been asking the candidates how they stand on term limits and possibly single member districts, and we'd like to hear your feeling on that.
Just off the top of my head, term limits limit the power of the voters. You guys are the ones that determine how long my term is. We only have 3% of the voters that vote in the municipal elections. Looking at the records, that's 2,500 people that vote in the municipal elections. We spend a lot of time on the minor leagues. To me, national politics is minor leagues compared to what happens right here, right now. How many of your toilets work? How many of your toilets work? Okay? What government official are you going to call when your toilet doesn't work anymore?
My wife calls me.
Okay. You understand the context that I'm talking about. You're not going to call the president or congressman or anybody else. You're going to call, if you're going to call a politician, you're going to call a local politician and say, there's problems with the sewage in our city. Can you fix it? So I don't think term limits fixes problems. Single member districts. Single member districts in some places will work, and they work well, because of socioeconomic and demographic issues. Okay? We don't have another side of the tracks in Mesquite, but the other parts of the nation have the other side of the tracks. You understand what I'm saying? We don't have a disparity in the demographics in our city. Every neighborhood in our town has a mixture of demographics, different races. One thing we do have is a socioeconomic issue. There are parts of our town where people don't make as much money as other parts of the town. Single-member districts, from my perspective, will solve problems where there are demographic disparities. Mesquite doesn't have that. One of the things that single member districts do is hold your elected officials responsible and accountable. Well, that's all back on the voters again. If somebody in your place is not responding to the needs of that place, then you need to vote them out. Our town is too small for single-member districts to make a difference in the way that we do business in Mesquite. It would divide the town rather than bringing the town together. And that's my opinion.
You had mentioned low voter participation. We've had that brought up tonight, 3%, 2%, 1.5% in some elections, whatever. Apathy, real tremendous problem. Just as a quick aside, I attended my 40th Mesquite High reunion in 2012. Went up to fellow class favorites, highlighters, principals awards, asked everyone that was a leader if they would help some of us turn Mesquite around, hoping I would get maybe 2 people, 3 people. I couldn't find one. The unanimous comment was, it's too late. You'll never be able to turn things around. Forget it, wipe the dust off your feet, and move on. How do we respond to that, and what can you do to inspire confidence and turn this situation around if you feel it is a problem?
I'm not a lifelong resident of Mesquite. I was born in San Diego, California. As soon as I turned 18 and my father was pushing Navy boots out at NTC, Naval Training Center, I decided to join the Air Force because that was why I was leaving. I didn't want my dad to have too much input into my life after I grew up. I married a Texan soon after I got to Texas. Stayed in the military for 26 years, but before she agreed to marry me, she said, you gotta take me back home when we retire. So I took a detour and went to seminary for 2.5 years, and the church that I became a part of sent me to Mesquite. I stayed with that church. It was a legacy church, and it was not thriving, and we helped lay it to rest. It was a World War II church. The people, not the building, the people. And when my wife and I decided where we were going to live after traveling around the world, we looked at Mesquite and said, this is a nice town. So we bought our first home ever in Mesquite. We liked what we saw. So I'm new on the block, but I have to tell the elders of this town, if there are any elders here of this town, you made this a place where me and my wife wanted to live out our life. Okay, she's got property down in San Antonio, and she told me the other day, if I get real sick, that's where I want to go. But we plan to stay here as long as we can. So the things that were, I can't talk about what it was. I can say it is nice to live in Mesquite, and I'm new here. And what I want to do in the future is to make it a place where other people will say, this is a nice place to live. I want to create memories for kids, the kind that I hear Councilman Archer talk about when he was a kid here, riding bikes. And you know, whatever kids do, they're not going to be riding bikes. Right now they're doing skate parks and skating on your property and all that kind of stuff. But I want to be able to make this a place where the generation behind me will say, this was my hometown. I want to leave this place better than when I found it. And when I found it, I thought it was a nice place to live. So am I answering your question? No. I'm just saying, I like this place.
We'd like it a lot better if there was a lot less apathy and a lot more voter participation. So you
Well, all I can do is do what I do. Go up and shake people's hand talk to them, and encourage everyone to do that. And it gets to a place where people are ashamed not to vote. And the only way we can do that is just be concerned citizens. That's why this is a nonpartisan race. But I've been knocking on doors, and oftentimes this last couple times, what party are you? Well, this is nonpartisan. This is for Mesquite. But anyway, that's another story.
We're almost out of time. I have one question, and I haven't felt comfortable asking anybody this one question, but it's important. And I'm gonna phrase it the way that I mean it, okay, Ron? So don't take this as an offense. Do you think, and there's some things going on in our culture and in our state and our nation right now, this is very important. Do you think it is safe or appropriate for children to use transgender bathrooms in public?
No. Drop the mic. You know?
Thank you.
We're getting warmed up now, Ron.
We all know that we need the $50 million to $100 million road bonds. We know we need it, but I don't know who feels safe in voting for it because they've never done the right thing with our money. So what difference are you gonna make on our city council that we're gonna feel like, hey, if we vote for this bond, somebody's going to do the right thing with this money, and they're gonna make sure that these special interest groups and all this stuff does not take our money from now on, but that it gets used to the benefit of the citizens, and if a homeowners association can plan their roofs and their sidewalks and everything, I don't know why the city of Mesquite has not been able to do that. And so what difference are you gonna make to where we can feel good about voting for that bond?
Well, when you deal with money, it has to be transparent. Now, not everybody's a geek like me that will read 346 pages, 349 pages of this 2014-2015 budget. Anybody done that? I've read part of it. I haven't read all of it. That's how many pages it is. They're going through the budget cycle even right now as we speak. The departments are going to the city manager's office with their, can I have this much money to run my department? They're doing it right now. Right after the election, they're going to bring it to the public. June, July, and August, or something like that. They're going to be public hearings. If I have the honor of serving on the city council, my first town hall meeting will be a budget meeting. And it won't be a meeting where you come and gripe and complain and all this. It's going to sit down, this is the budget, let's look at it. What do you like? You like parks? Okay, this is the page the parks budget's on. What do you like? You like the pound? Well, here, this is the pound's budget. And we are going to look at the budget. We're going to talk about the budget. You're going to be familiar with the budget. So that when someone says, hey, they're stealing our money, you can go to the budget and see, or you can go to the financial report, which comes out after they've spent the money, and you can say, well, that's where that dollar was destined to. So it's got to be what we call transparency. But transparency only works when people want to see. Okay, if you want to see the budget, what I'm saying to you, I'm going to be accessible and open to you. If you want to talk about the budget, we can stand all night and talk about the budget. It's 349 pages long. Okay? You'll be able to see where the money comes in, where the money goes out. And I want to be able to do that. I want to engage the people that want to be engaged. Some people don't care. But then there are some people that really do care about the money. And so we want to have the right information that goes out. Okay? And if we see something wrong with it, then we take it back to the colleagues on the council, we take it to the city manager and say, hey, 1 + 1 does not equal 5. Not even in the tax test, it doesn't do that. So that's what I'm talking about, transparency and in-your-face kind of stuff. Here's the budget, what problem do you have? Okay, and then we've got to sit down and talk about it. I hope I answered your question.
Okay, I have one. It's pretty much a simple yes, no. Would you favor taking the checkbook, so all financial transactions the city produces, putting them on a public ledger tied to an invoicing system so that that's viewable at all times?
Yes or no? nice if it's feasible.
It is.
Well, I'm not there yet, so I don't know. I know what's available now, okay? Now, having been in bureaucracies, I've got some experience in bureaucracies. Like I said, I've worked in Washington D.C. in the military with by name requests. You don't get that in the military very often. You know, general says, "Hey, I want this guy." It's a job I do. My dad told me when I left home, do your best, and that's all I was doing. And my best allowed me to work in places that were some of the top places in my enlisted career field. Watching the Pentagon work, it had its good days and bad days. I was there when they were selling toilet seats and hammers for, thousands of dollars. I worked in the FAA for 6 years as a uniformed guy in the bureaucracy. I've seen its good days and its bad days. And I know that you need bureaucracy to make it work. And there are some people in the bureaucracy that are dedicated public servants. When people find out that I was in the military, they come and say, "Thank you for your service." And I tell them it was fun for me, because it was. I was in the Cold War. I didn't have to, dodge bullets. But if it's good for the bureaucracy and it doesn't cost us any money to do that, then we do it. But there is already a system in place. And I don't know how the system works because I haven't got inside it yet. But there is accountability. And if we want to put it out so everybody can see it, all it is scanning stuff in and putting it on a website somewhere, I think.
There's programs for it. It's not free, but there are programs. The next one, Mesquite tends to have a very high number of executive sessions. Would you be in favor of reducing those at least down to the average of other city councils?
Well, I don't know what the average is. I've been going
I'll settle for average. That was the question. Right now, we're excessively high.
I don't know. I mean, there are certain things that you don't want to tell the enemy, even in municipal government. And the enemy is not us, okay? The enemy are those that want to sue the city for millions and millions of dollars. You're the city, when it comes to that comes to your money. Well, you don't want the other lawyers knowing about that. There are other times it has to be an executive session when you're buying property. You're trying to get the property at the cheapest rate. You don't want the negotiations to be out in the public, and then somebody buys it out from under you and then turns around and sells it to you for twice as much. So I think you have to have executive sessions. I can't really answer the question because I don't know what average is. I know that every time I go to the city council pre-meeting, which I started going 3 years ago when the person first asked me to run for the city council because I wanted to know what was going on, not just when back then it was like 5 or 10 minutes at noontime or whatever time it was, and it's gee whiz, But going to the working sessions, the pre-meetings, you see a lot done. You see conversation, you see things. But I know I could get there late because as soon as they open up the pre-meeting, they're off into the back room. So I don't know how much is too much.
You'll look into it. Fair enough.
Hey, when I get there, yeah, if I can go to the back meeting and eat the candy and stuff,
Okay, you've got, we're gonna give you 2 minutes, so
2 minutes.
2 minutes for your final speech.
Final speech.
Does anybody have any questions? We were running out of them earlier, so does anybody have any questions? I think they're all getting tired. The pizza's gotten to them.
Okay.
Anybody, one question?
None?
Who's the person that asked you to run?
Barbara Rojas.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's your neighbor you're talking about?
Oh, well, all y'all are my neighbors.
No, but who's the neighbor you're talking about that asked you to run?
Barbara Rojas.
Who's Barbara?
Yeah. She's not my neighbor like this gentleman right here is my neighbor right now, but we're neighbor because we see each other a lot. And then other people began to ask me, and then said, my wife told me when we moved here, "Ron, when we get out of the military, you're gonna get into politics." No, I'm not. I'm just gonna do what I do, and the next thing I get up, I told you so. Wives, I tell you. Yeah, can't live without you. But she's not the boss of me, okay? you know, and there, someone said this is serious, and it is very serious. Okay? I jumped right into the major leagues. Municipal governing is the major leagues, because I'm going to see you at Kroger's, or I'm going to see you at Albertsons. I'm going to see you around town. Now, you have to bear with me. I'll say hi and yes, and pleased to meet you. How you been? I don't remember names, but I remember stories. Okay? I remember stories. So if you tell me a story or we make a story, then I'm going to remember you. But you are my neighbors. And one of the values that I live by is treat people the way that I want to be treated. I don't want you to drive on broken down streets, because I don't want to drive on broken down streets. Okay? I want your tax dollars spent wisely because I want my tax dollars spent wisely. And I can go on and on and on. But I want to govern that way. Because the most important thing for me is when they plant me under the rose bushes. I want to hear my God say, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." Because that's who I have to answer to. Is that time? Vote for Ron Ward, place 6, Mesquite City Council, please.